Hello and welcome to Autistic Radio. Thank you to our sponsor, coldpack.co.uk. If you're an osteopath, a physiotherapist, a chiropractor, and you require the best cryotherapy gel pack that also has your details, your website, your logo printed on it to remind your patients of you and increase your referrals, then they are sponsoring this program and we benefit when you buy from them. If you're an end user who needs a cold pack to replace that one that's in the sports first aid kit, coldpack.co.uk, every penny you spend on that website goes directly to Autistic Radio and Autistic Association. Thank you for your sponsorship.
Hello, this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 26th of October 2025, and this is where we share and discuss the Facebook posts that have been shared on the Autistic Radio page. The first post is from Aurora Consulting, who is a business consultant. Aurora is an autistic-owned business offering organisations bespoke training and consulting. And what they've shared is the following. Good morning to everyone, but especially those who forgot the clocks went back last night. And an extra enthusiastic good morning to all who are going to be confused by your car clock since you didn't change it since months ago. And now it's telling the right time. That'll be me. Post is referring to the change of the clock that goes back an hour this weekend in October, which is the end of British summertime.
My confusion this time was I forgot that it was Saturday into Sunday that it changed. I thought it was going to be Sunday into Monday. I don't know where I got that from. But being a guy who's never been fond of getting out of bed early, it really is a struggle to get enough daylight now because, you really have to get up with the sun in order to get a maximum amount of daylight for the next, how many months is it? Before we go, 6 months, yeah. Well, no, it's actually like December the 21st, isn't it, when we'll regain a bit more daylight. Time, it's such a confusing thing. I can remember being at primary school in the late 1960s, so about 1969. Maybe I'm about 6 or 7 years old. And they did something with European time back then, which meant that it was extremely dark when you went to school. And it was still dark when classes began at 9 a.m. I don't know if anybody else can remember that.
And text, GR saying it takes time for me to adjust. Just like there's some static in the air interfering with my ability to feel where I am.
I think it makes a lot of sense to be confused. We have it here too. It just happens next weekend, going in the same direction. But I think the reason we might feel strange, or some of us, is I'll use my dog as an example. Dogs tend to go by the light, the sun in the sky, the way we probably did a long time ago. And then they get used to all of our routines day by day because the sun isn't exactly in the same spot in the sky. And they really notice the time changes. Like, they're like, why are all the milestones of my day happening an hour off? They eventually get used to it.
Good point, Teresa. I was beginning to question what you were saying there by thinking nothing has really changed. But yeah, for the dog who's used to a routine happening at a certain time, the change in the human is a change for the dog or the animal. And so, yeah, the change does exist. But actually nothing has really changed except a time mechanism.
It just shows you how important time is. I mean, what you're referring to, Ray, back in the 60s, my dad actually mentioned that a few times because me being my autistic self, or probably just be nosy, asked why they change the clocks, because even though they do it in the most, or they're supposed to be doing it in the most convenient time of the week, which is a Sunday morning at 2 o'clock in the morning and reverting it to 1 in the morning. That's, if they did it in the weekday, it'd be a lot worse. I used to kind of wonder, what is going on here? Why did they do it? And my dad always reversed back to that time when he was in school. I think that's what you're referring to, Ray. is when they experimented in not doing it. And what actually happened was that up north in Scotland, it caused mayhem because it takes longer to get lighter up there. And in the morning, it was causing chaos for the likes of schools, etc. And I think he even said, even locally, it was really concerning about school children basically walking to school in the dark. So they did try experiment not doing it and it didn't work out. So that's why it remains why it is just now. But the time thing itself, especially when you're so not obsessed with time, but in myself, I'm just so, we're all sort of connected to time, the clock. And it's always an interesting concept when you go deeper. It's like a god, really. You don't worship it, you just do as you're told. And it's just, no matter if it's in the summer or going into the winter, it always seems to cause confusion to someone. But when people do talk about the inconvenience or confusion, it's not usually that much of a big deal because of the day of the week that happens.
Didn't they originally do it for the farmers? And I think it made a good difference in the spring, and then they put it back because it was causing a worse problem in the fall.
Yeah, I was told that that's why they originally did it in the first place, was for farming.
When I was a builder about 1988, we were on just basically a field, and some people turned up and they interviewed us all about changing the clocks and whether it should continue to happen. I can't remember who they were from. And my boss just turned around and said, we start at 7:30 and we finish at 4:30. And funnily enough, on that job, I remember, because obviously there's no electric, and late on in the day, we would actually drive our vans onto the site and shine the lights onto the job so we could see what we were doing.
The next post is from Actually Autistic, which is a paid educational consultant, late diagnosed, passionate advocate for diagnosed and undiagnosed autistic children and young people. And they've shared a quote: "Non-autistic people, please stop speaking for us, speaking over us, and acting like you know us better than we know ourselves."
Just ableism, I hate it.
Who actually speaks for us, over us, acting like they know us? Professionals. And I suppose it's creeping into the everyday public now, yeah, because the media kind of is full of jargon and opinion and comment. But generally speaking, my experience has been that they don't relate at all.
I think professionals is part of the problem, yes. The people, in my experience, who talk over you to an extent and try and talk for you is generally family. Especially if you're younger, especially if you're a child or even as a young, vulnerable adult. And it sometimes feels that assumptions are made and advice is given without it being sought. And many people feel that they're in that position. And some people feel if family, especially if they're strong, knitted family, with strong views of their own, but the views of their own isn't quite, it's not vicious. It's just overprotective, maybe, and has your best interest, or they think you have their best interests. I think that's what sometimes swarms a lot of autistic people from having their own voice and be able to say, saying, no, I don't agree with what you're saying there. Especially when you're talking about somebody. If somebody says you can't do something, or you need to behave, or you behave in a way that's negative, but you feel that it's not negative, it's just who you are. It's a lived experience, isn't it, really? It's like the assumptions are made. It's like, it's a big, bad, cruel world, as we all know. And I think some families can be overprotective. But on the other hand, there has been stories and experience from people that have said that there's been terms of bullying and intimidation as well from families, as well as professionals and people who are so-called experts. But a lot of the time, these so-called professionals and experts are actually invited by the family over your head. So, yeah, it's a mixture of both. It's a mixture of everything, really. Sometimes even friends.
I sometimes try and see the other point of view from officialdom, like why they're being the way they are. And reading into this, it might be sometimes, and I may be totally wrong here, that they're trying to assist through restricting anything that may disadvantage a conversation or a process, because they're all about processes, people. There's no deviation from that. That's how it works. And in order to enable your case, it may be that they sometimes try and calm down certain sentiments or words. But that's just me looking for, a chink of light in a very dark area.
The council told me when my mother died, I had to be out the house in 4 weeks, and I'd lived here 51 years at the time, and I didn't want to move. And there were such things. Have you got pets? No, good, because where you're going, you can't have one. I won't go into the whole situation, but it took 58 months. I fought for 58 months to live in the home that I'd lived in all my life. So there is a happy ending. I kept going through it because of the house. If I'd lost the house, I wouldn't have kept going.
Listen to these stories, especially people that have lived with their parents up until they passed away. It's quite heartbreaking how some of these things lack understanding in the process. Because things do have to happen and processes need to be made, but the lack of understanding of autism, or just even the lack of understanding of people, especially if it's a son or a daughter of the parents that passed away, but it just seems very uncaring.
Yeah, as you can imagine, like I say, 58 months of it, and there were various things. I mean, I was sent to look at a flat, and it's a podcast in itself. It was hell, 58 months. But at the end of it, when they said, well, you can stay, and it's like, why have you put me through this? Because my mental health, I mean, I got my autism diagnosis during this time. So that was a good thing that came out of it. But other than that, why? It was just literally mental cruelty.
In the text, home is not a place, it is about belonging, says Robbie. Harry says that's very true. The reason why I have lived in the same place for over 20 years. What Robbie describes is that he effectively lost both his parents and his home all at the same time. We've heard that he wasn't supported in those enormous things happening coincidentally. Ray says that these narratives sometimes make their own sense. I say that a few years ago, my entire house burnt down, including most of my belongings. And a few days ago, my wife brought out some photos that we had forensically retrieved from the enormous pile of ash. And they had been taken to a local photographer to restore from a few negatives. And these photos are of me and my wife and the first dog when we were in our 20s, just newly married. So there is something incredibly important, not just about places, but also about the belongings that go with those things, however trivial they may be. That burnt piece of negative from which I derive an enormous amount of pleasure now is important. And if we bring this back to the original post, an awful lot of autistic people are in situations where they're not being listened to, and what's important to them is being overridden by other people.
The next post is from Yael Clark, developmental psychologist, who has an education page, Anxiety and OCD in Children and Parents, special focus on autistics and ADHDers. And she shared the following. She shared an image, which is a screenshot from the public page of a mother who has an autistic child. The child, whose face has been cropped out of the photo, is holding a sign that reads, "Autism is a disability, not an identity trend." Next to that image is my own image of a woman holding a sign that reads, "Affirming autistic identity improves the life of disabled people." and I have included a screenshot of my comment on that mother's post, and this text is the following. Autism is a disability, and one way of developing self-esteem is to accept one's autistic identity. Autistic identity means that we know we belong to a community that has strengths as well as struggles, and that deserves human rights. That is all. Autistic identity does not mean whitewashing disability or promoting some delusional supremacy fantasy. It is categorically not trendy. Accepting one's autistic identity can be life-saving for people who would otherwise be misdiagnosed with personality disorders or behavioural disorders. Of course, autistic people might have a personality disorder, but that comes from deep wounds, whereas being autistic is simply the way we are made. The only way we are going to heal this terrible divide in our community is to go beyond memes and catchphrases and actually understand each other. If you think that the autistic identity movement is just a trend, then you don't understand it. If I think that the profound autism movement is just a way to centre parents, then I don't understand it. Like the severe autism, stop being part of the problem. Stop sharing simplistic, facile catchphrases. Let's dialogue.
The more I read of Yael's posts, the better I feel. To have that person out there thinking these things and clearly putting them down is really, really important. So thank you. Divisions. People will try to create divisions. Divisions because of the myth of scarcity. And working against that, as Yael is doing, is important. And they are right. It is about dialogue. It is about conversations. And if Yael can suggest in any way that we here at Autistic Radio can help in that, improve in that, be of service to Yael, we're here.
I like the approach that Yael's post has made. There's so much division out there. And division out there is not actually deliberate in a nasty way. It's trying to protect, like, for instance, a mother trying to protect her child. But what it does, or what it seems to be doing in many autistic people's eyes, is causing harm. I think, though, that autism is in different levels of being not just accepted, which is a horrible thing to say, but it's true, but being understood of what actually is. And the complications of that, because every single person who's autistic is different. And every person who is autistic has different strengths, they have different needs, they have different struggles, and they have different journeys in life. And that's always going to be the sort of barrier to overcome. I don't think there's any intention to harm. It's about protection.
So is this hinting that we're not allowed to own identity? And I know there's a comparison being drawn between the two images, and the concern about identity is maybe being exploited to a certain extent. But owning identity, I think, again, is part of that other subject narrative, you know, the way you're supposed to live your life, the story you live, and being an identity is quite important to people. Part of that relationship.
I think there's this extra layer in here where the first image is a mother of a child. I assume that Yael knows more about the story behind this screenshot because she has such a thorough response and her response is correct. I can't help but wondering, does that mother mean autism is a disability and this idea about identity is not a trend? Maybe. But we have to assume based on the reaction that she sees the identity aspect as a trend. That's the only thing I can say is Oh, what a disadvantage when a parent doesn't understand, but at least they understand more than they did, I guess, when we were children. I'm not sure. And then my other thought was the internet and social media. They just allow this sort of way of holding up a sign which is not well thought through. And I guess it's virtue signaling or something like that.
I think we can link this back to the previous post about who's speaking for us. And it would appear that there is an autism mum here. I think that's a phrase that has been coined. Autism mum. Somebody fiercely protecting their child from the outside world, and they are coming up against autistic people who later have latched onto the neurodiversity paradigm, and there appears to the autism mum looking after their child a conflict there, a conflict, say, stop going on about identity, take your identity politics and stick them, because my child is disabled, my child needs help, society needs to recognise the disability of my child, otherwise I get the services for my child that I need. That's really what I perceive as the difficulty that's being pointed to.
Being suggested that the autistic identity or the neurodivergent identity shall not prevail.
It appears that way, and it's always going to be resisted. Every autistic person's different, right? So if someone who's autistic, and especially if it's a parent, is emotionally involved, of course, they're saying stop simplifying it. Dare to say, stop making it sound like being autistic is wonderful. It's not, it's hell. And my child's going through hell. Stop downplaying it and start recognising for what they believe autism actually is, or being autistic actually is. But there's a lack of understanding from that viewpoint due to their prejudice because of what they think they see in their own child.
It does appear that in the United States, stateside, there is this already existing disagreement between the neurodiversity movement and those who have gone before, particularly those who have gone before supporting the behavioural science interventions to fix their kids. So it does appear that the politics is something that is being pointed to here. And I think the poster is trying to say, let's talk about it. It's a real open conversation and see what we can do here. And that's what I want to take from here. I want to take the positiveness of this person saying there's a solution out there and it's dialogue.
Yeah, I agree. It's that thing we often talk about, that two things can be true at the same time. But some cultures are fast. They want one thing to win. One of my best friends from my childhood moved to the United States, and so I only told a few people after my diagnosis, and she lived more than half of her life outside of Canada, and she thought about it for a long time. She said, as long as you don't use it as an excuse. Haven't spoken about it again with her.
Thanks for everyone that's posted and what we'll share tonight. It was very good topics and conversation and lengthy discussions as always. I look forward to doing this next time. And now I'll hand over to Jules.
We have a sponsor, coldpack.co.uk. You are a practitioner who requires cryotherapy solution for your clinic. coldpack.co.uk prints your details on the outside of the pack to remind your patients to come to you. If you're an end user who needs a cold pack to replace that one that's in the sports first aid kit, coldpack.co.uk, every penny you spend on that website goes directly to Autistic Radio and Autistic Association. Autistic Radio is about us, it's for us, and it's from us. Autistic Radio is about you, it's for you, and it can be from you. We have every single Sunday, drop in. 4:44 PM every Sunday. That's not live. That's us getting together, us talking, community. Every Sunday, Harry leads a 5:55 PM, a discussion around the Facebook page that he creates. Involve yourself by suggesting what we should talk about next. Share it with Harry. And then the bigger picture. Advocate. Use us. Speak to the world. Your project, your idea, your enthusiasm. We have a whole range of different programs that will fit what you want. As far as listening goes, there's some challenging stuff out there. Because amongst the identity, the entertainment, and the community, we also make serious programs with autism professionals, challenging their ideas and bringing what you say in other spaces to them. A lot of those are difficult listens, but it's a holistic gathering. It comes all together. Autistic Radio is very varied. We need a favour. To encourage us, we need you to share us. When you share us, you give autistic people power. When you share us, you make us impossible to ignore. When you repost on LinkedIn and Facebook and anywhere else, you're advocating for everybody in the autistic community. So pick the things that you're happy with and get them out there. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you from all of us.